I don't know about you, ma'am, but it feels like video games take way too long to develop these days. And I want product now. I haven't consumed in like 2 days.
Now I'm gonna starve!
In any case, I recently stumbled across this article by GameDeveloper.com. What's the real reason games are taking longer to make? I thought the name of the website was interesting, but I think it's a question we've all asked ourselves at one point or another. I mean, take a look at Silksong. It was in development for like 6 years, and the reason they said why it took so long is that they were having too much fun with the game. Now, this might be a controversial theory of mine. I don't think everyone in the game industry is having too much fun making games. I think that's something that only applies to indie developers who can afford to take longer, or, you know, there's not many companies that are as big as Valve that have the same concept of Valve time. It's done when it's done. Like my Red Dead 2 review, it'll be finished when it's finished and I will make it great. But if you look at once staple franchises like Fable, Gears of War, it seems like there's a much longer process and more hurdles and roadblocks and all this shit that creates a much longer development time for some of our favorite franchises. So I thought, let's read this article, see if we can find any answers. Can AI really speed up game development? Now that's a question. That is certainly a question. I have, you guys know my stance on AI. I'm about to expand on that a bit more, I imagine. Developers everywhere agree traditional game development studios are taking longer and longer to make. Traditional game development studios being the AAA ones. With rapidly made games like Peak tearing up the charts, there's widespread interest in scaling down production timelines. But is the answer AI, smaller teams, or something else entirely? Ooh boy, I could give you a lot of answers on this. Smaller teams, smaller production. More people, more cooks in the kitchen. I don't know, isn't building a video game just like making a building? If you're making a hut, it takes less time versus a castle. I think the answers are going to be a combination of things, but can generative AI really speed up game production? My first thought is yes, but should it? I actually stopped playing Black Ops 6 once it was revealed that they were using AI to generate cosmetics that you could unlock and or buy with real money in the game. To me, that was such a disgusting practice because it wasn't disclosed, number one. And number two, what's wrong with the system of like having artists make something? Can generative AI really speed up game production? That's a question I found myself asking. After reading an op-ed from GameIndustry.biz, editor Lewis Packwood recounting his conversations with developers at Gamescom. According to him, developers at the event were telling him about the need to make games on faster dev cycles, targeting only 1 or 2 years of work instead of half a decade. Interesting how it's like, well, we can either do 1 or 2 or 5. There's 2 numbers in between 2 and 5, 3 and 4. I used to think 3 years for like major FPS productions seemed perfect, like the formula just worked. Halo 2, 2004. Halo 3, 07. Reach, 10. Whatever Bungie did in those early days with Halo, like that is the three-peat. That is the cycle. Many developers we've heard from in the last year have echoed that sentiment, but the piece still proved controversial on social media. Why? According to Packwood, developers are doing this by using generative AI to create code snippets, concept art, and other assets in order to quickly iterate on ideas. Now, I'm kind of mixed on this because on one hand, you could quickly generate a piece of concept art with AI rather quickly, that then you can use that to create the real art. However, part of me wants to ask the artists watching this, is that worth doing? Or isn't it worth going through the entire process of just someone who makes that concept art themselves? I feel like it kind of depends on the game because I'm not very good at art. If I were an artist, I would probably just go through the whole process myself. But if I wasn't an artist, yeah, I might use AI to generate something. But in the end, if I wanted to make a game, I would still hire like an artist. So maybe for code, what do code bros in the chat right now think about using AI to write code or organize it? I'm not entirely familiar, but AI seems like it's really good for those menial, tedious tasks of like, hey, can you take 100 names, organize them alphabetically? Versus like the artistic, human craftsman type of job. So in that sense, I think AI is better at doing stuff people don't want to do, but people should want to create art for the video games. Otherwise, like, where is that spark coming from if you're not there with the pen and paper? Plus, it's also way more interesting to see like old concept art. Like, my first thought is thinking about those Star Wars Battlefront 4 concept arts where it was like all the characters you know but reversed, like redeemed Anakin or dark-sided Obi-Wan. And it's like, look at how fucking awesome these are. They were drawn by hand. It's way more interesting to me, especially when looking at a behind-the-scenes perspective, to see what the artist's earliest interpretation of the thing we see on screen is. Yeah, I can't think of any good reason to use AI to generate assets, unless you're like really small and you're trying to save money. Packwood wrote, saying many he spoke with at Gamescom were coy about the topic, dreading backlash like the kind faced by 11-bit studios after AI-generated assets were found in the altars. While Packwood cruised downriver to argue that AI is, quote, already in widespread use, unquote, in the game industry, then it's absurd for developers to live in fear forever. I was still back upstream trying to understand how generating code snippets, concept art, or other assets could speed up production. The logic implies that what's slowing down game development is the speed of making assets included in the game like code, 3D models, text, audio, etc. If that's the problem, then generative AI spitting out assets would be a solution. Yes, it would. But AI that is generative is generating that image based off of something, whether it's a real photograph, someone else's art. In that sense, generative AI is always going to be inferior than what somebody could have created on their own, at least in my opinion. So the writer here, Bryant Francis, ended up sending emails to developers, publishers, and industry experts asking one not so easy question. What do you think is the number one reason games are taking longer to make? See, if we get different answers than assets, maybe AI is not the answer. More assets doesn't equal more fun. The number one reason games are taking longer to make is that the quality bar has risen dramatically. Players today expect fun and engaging gameplay, cutting-edge visuals, memorable narrative, and characters, and the ability to play whenever and wherever they want. That's what Tencent Games Strategy and Compliance Vice President Yongyi Zhu offered up in response to our Hipfire developer survey. That is an interesting question. The quality bar has risen, especially for already established franchises. Player expectations, at least for me, are always based on what I have played before. I've played a lot of Call of Duty, and I've seen a lot of shit in recent years, so I don't expect much nowadays. What players expect and what they want are two different things. And I think what this person is saying is that cutting edge visuals and a really good narrative, character design, the ability to play whenever and wherever they want, so porting this game to multiple different platforms, all of those things I think do contribute to a long development cycle. But at the end of the day, like, players want what's fun, what's interesting, what's different, but also familiar. And this depends on if you're doing like single player, multiplayer, co-op, whatever, but if you think about it, multiplayer games nowadays are expected to be supported, have that live service. We live in the TikTok brain rot era right now, and so people's attention spans, I feel like, are much shorter than they used to be. You constantly need that carrot dangling off the end of the stick. It's, what's the new bugs in Helldivers? Hold on, it's video's over, I gotta go kill bugs, right? It's kind of like that. So it's deeply competitive, and a memorable narrative always helps. But as far as video games, like, that is not always essential. So if you're a large studio making games in a familiar genre, it takes a lot of work to meet player expectations, let alone exceed them. Yes, because gamers are very much a jaded crowd. I wouldn't know anything about that. I think maybe part of the reason why for some franchises there's this sentiment that, like, oh, the series is dead or it's completely lost its way, it's a shell of its former self, is just because, like, over time and over player experience, expectations within that franchise just kind of, they can easily get to unrealistic standards. But I'd rather shoot for the moon and only hit the ozone, you know what I mean, than shoot for the ozone and not even make it there. Zhu and Unity Engine Senior Vice President of Product, Adam Smith, boy, what a title, both pointed out that smaller teams making more experimental titles can move way faster. Yes, absolutely. They can also make something much more better, clear, with a refined focus. It's easier to get like 40 people on board with an idea than 400. Like Diablo 4 was made by what, 9,000 people had their hand in that cookie jar? Like, how do you get 9,000 people people on board with that, with every design choice. And they nodded to viral climbing game Peak as a key example. This game was announced and launched in the space of a week and went on to sell 100,000 units in 24 hours, crossing 1 million sales a few days later. The vast majority of production took place during that 4-week period, starting in February 2025. Graphics aren't everything. I haven't played Peak at all. This is the first I'm seeing of it, but just these 2 seconds, you can tell not as much effort went into this as like Red Dead 2 or something. I don't know, maybe the problem is that there's so many people chasing the dragon, trying to make the next best, most popular thing for the least amount of effort, trying to cut corners when video game production should be like good film production, in that it's a group of talented people all coming together with a vision and executing on it. Like Toto said, art isn't always on time. That's what I think it is just having the right vision and executing on that. Maybe it's just a matter of making the thing, and when it's done, it's done. The vicious cycle of photorealism. Yeah, so for some of those big AAA games, you know, like people were talking about the Peach Fuzz rendering on Aloy and Horizon Forbidden West. You remember that? It's like, why are we listening to guys talking about how amazing the Peach Fuzz rendering is? Like, Rockstar did not need to have testicle physics for horses in Red Dead 2. It wasn't necessary. I feel like they wanted to add that, you know what I mean? But so this writer also reached out to a CEO, Heather Serlan, at Near Studios, a veteran technical artist from the world of large AAA games. To her, the longer development cycles are a consequence of tying the quality of games to photorealistic art direction. Which does make sense, because when looking at a game like Concord, part of the reason it ironically didn't work artistically was it was too photorealistic. Like, some of these character designs probably wouldn't have been as bad if they were just stylized different, like maybe exaggerated, more goofy and cartoony, less detailed, less polygons and rendering. Ironically, that's kind of funny. What if there was a challenge where it's like, I dare someone to try and recreate these characters in an art style where they don't look like dog shit from Concord? For the last 10 to 15 years, games grew in scope and became more and more photorealistic. Hardware and tools were coming to market that technically made this feasible. Developers were excited about the tech and were eager to use them and showcase the work made with those tools. And again, when you think about like the ways in which Halo 3 was revolutionary visually, a lot of it had to do with the actual physics, how you, the player, interacted with other things in the game. Even though Halo 3 looked fantastic at the time, it was more than that. It wasn't photorealism. But just because those tools made photorealism feasible didn't mean it made them easy to use. Serlin and her peers knew that, but plenty of executives and decision makers didn't. I'm so shocked CEOs and executives don't know how to make video games. That's not what they're there for. And they were the ones approving ever skyrocketing budgets. Photorealistic games required complex tools required specialists in numbers that ballooned team sizes. Bigger teams meant worse communication. Yeah, so what it sounds like is just one guy who doesn't know how to fucking make games, who's somehow worked his way into being the decision maker on how they're going to make a game. I think we're onto something. You guys got your tinfoil hats? Mine's around here somewhere. Worse communication meant unexpected tech problems that took time to address. Unexpected tech problems created performance optimization problems. And before you know it, your game studio is spending time chasing frame rate bugs, then iterating on core gameplay and other elements that 95% of players don't care about. That is well said. And I know Halo's on my mind, but I instantly thought of that first reveal for Halo Infinite, and what were they trying to show us? How photorealistic and how good the graphics were. It was an engine demonstration, and that's my first thought, is like, that makes so much more sense. Then when the game finally launches, there's frame drops and bugs that frustrate players and they lose confidence. This problem is making it so that they couldn't innovate in areas where players wanted innovation. The industry is now facing a reckoning, and I believe this issue of more, bigger, prettier is a major factor as to why everyone in video games is suffering right now and why everything feels soulless. Ooh. She's spitting right now. And to be fair, like, there are instances where I think optimization and frame rate can be pretty huge, massive issues. Wasn't it Cyberpunk on console was like 30 FPS or something? But I feel like frame rate is often something that is super duper overanalyzed and its importance overemphasized by a relatively smaller group of people that are probably still gonna play the game if it's really fun. It just, as long as it's playable, right? It's kind of like, oh, I'm only getting 80 frames when I should be getting 120. What Sirland seems to be saying is that the industry is chasing the wrong thing. They're chasing style over substance, and that makes a lot of sense. Sirland's tool-oriented thinking casts a glaring light on the idea of better games emerging from a process where the asset machine is just cranked up to maximum speed. But photorealism isn't the only reason a game may take years in development. What happens when developers report that spending more time in the shop is key to making a high-quality game? And then he immediately brings up Silksong. Makes sense. Given that Hollow Knight Silksong is riding high after 7 years of development, we really should have been more prepared for developers to praise longer production timelines. Yeah, and the article continues about different kinds of game releases, like even for early access, it often means a lot of delay to ensure things are in great shape. And if you think about that, like, how do you release a game is also part of the development cycle. If you're a big AAA game trying to break into the live service market, well, you not only have to release the game in a playable state, otherwise people leave in droves. You have to like hit the ground running with a live service. Like, for all the good Helldivers has done and for all the content it's added, as fast as they've been doing that, they do introduce new problems seemingly with each update. Though at least in my experience, none of them have been so bad it's unplayable. I don't know, at least from an outsider's perspective, you would think the process by which you release a game should be like well documented and understood. And I mean, there should be ways to test it, but at the end of the day, it's like practice for a sport. You only know how you're going to perform once you're out on the field. Practice can only teach you so much. Now here's an interesting part. So these two developers mentioned about players being let down by bugs and frame drops when playing AAA games. But the difference might be about what kind of expectations you're being measured against. Promise visual perfection and every inadvertent T-pose damns you to the pits of Tartarus. Promise hours of emergent gameplay and players will shrug off frame drops or hitches. Exactly, right? Which is why when Phil Spencer was saying the Series X, I still remember this, world's most powerful console, and this is how the brand new Halo game is gonna look on it. And there's Craig, right? Halo Infinite kinda is like the poster child for everything that can go wrong in like modern AAA development. This guy Miller, who works at Riot Games and is working on the fighting game of League of Legends, TXKO, said it's important for developers to take the time to better understand the game we should be making and the players we're making it for. And has said he's worked on it for many years, saw the team go through countless cycles of building, testing, and refining the game's direction. Each time we do this, the team learns something important that shifts our direction slightly, right? It's not always a straight drive to the promised land. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes it's ready when it's ready, and we'll know when that is. We've been doing this long enough, we know when it's ready. Yeah, so to conclude, why games are taking longer to develop is a problem that I don't think is going to be solved by generative AI. As the article states, generative AI's princess is still in another castle. And so it's going to be interesting to see how all of these massive multi-billion-dollar investments into AI chatbots and sources is, if ever, going to actually pay dividends. I mean, maybe there's a way to use AI to help create the AI of enemies in-game? Or allies? I don't know. I can't think of too many ways it could realistically help. But what do you think? Why are games taking longer to make? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to The Act Man for more awesome content. If you'd like to support the channel on Patreon, you can do so in the description below. For as little as $1 a month, you can join my private Discord server and play custom games with me. We just got finished playing Renegade X. It was a ton of fun, but we're going to be open to doing Halo, Call of Duty, all sorts of things. So that's all I got for today. This is The Act Man signing out. Peace!